Video games love to divide their endings into good and bad versions. However, just because the game tells you that something is a good ending, it doesn't necessarily mean you're meant to take it at face value. If we were to look at some of the good endings in video games from the perspective of what might have happened off screen, a lot of them wouldn't really stick the good landing. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 good video game endings that probably went horribly off screen. Number 10, Olgierd's New Life, The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3's Hearts of Stone DLC ends with Geralt choosing between delivering Olgierd's soul to Gaunter O'Dim or fighting the devil to save his victim instead. Now, giving up Olgierd to Gaunter is obviously pretty terrible, seeing as you're literally trading his soul away, but when you think about it, the alternative good ending isn't that much better. Sure, Olgierd gets to live his life and not have his soul sucked by a demon, but on the other hand, due to his immortality, all of his friends and family are gone. The love of his life was doomed to suffering eternally in a limbo painting, his brother is gone, and any sort of wealth he might have had has shriveled into nothing. The only thing Olgierd has to look forward to is a short and miserable life of banditry alongside whatever is left of his band. And since he has nothing to lose, that either means he'd become a menace that someone like Geralt would have to put down, or a suicidal maniac who'd throw himself into danger just to give himself an excuse to end it all. You know, maybe it would have been better to end his suffering quickly. Number 9, Jack probably dies miserable, Red Dead Redemption. Despite being a humorous caricature of the Old West at times, it's hard to call the story of Red Dead Redemption happy. Most of Dutch's gang members end up dead throughout the course of both games, and the rest of them are in hiding. But hey, at least Red Dead Redemption 1 lets you get revenge for John's murder, right? So long as Jack gets to put one between Edgar Ross's eyes, at least something is right in the world. Well, not really. Although avenging John might feel good to you in the moment, when you think about the consequences it has on Jack's life, you'd wish Agent Ross got to enjoy his retirement after all. You see, by choosing to avenge his father, Jack is actually dooming himself to a horrible end. The murder of a federal agent will brand him as an outlaw and force him to run from the law for the rest of his days. If he doesn't end up killed like his father, Jack would live a sad and lonely life as one of the last few outlaws in the dying Wild West. It's not only a terrible fate for Jack, but also for all the efforts that John and Arthur put into trying to protect him. Number 8, Shell's escape into another hell, Portal 2. The ending of Portal 2 is a powerful moment when GLaDOS and Shell finally bury the hatchet, and the poor test subject gets to leave the Aperture Science facility after years of being forced to run dangerous tests against her will. However, as the text of GLaDOS' song at the end suggests, Shell has nothing but a short, sad life to look forward to. Whereas the idea of her finally getting her freedom sounds great at first and looked really good as my wallpaper for a good few years, the reality of her escape is that Shell has only managed to walk from one hell into another. To start, given her years of confinement and the potential brain damage she suffered due to GLaDOS' neurotoxins, she'd have an extremely hard time adapting to a new environment, which, considering Portal and Half-Life take place in the same universe, is a whole other trauma can of worms to open. Given the ridiculously long time Shell spent in cryostasis as well, the Combine invaded Earth could be anything from an empty wasteland to a dystopian civilization of humans and aliens. Either way you turn it, it doesn't really bode well for our girl, who spent her entire life picking up cubes for a sadistic supercomputer. Number 7, survival horror with an alien twist, Resistance 3. Resistance 3 is the final installment of Insomniac's alien-themed shooter, and definitely the shortest entry in the series. Its ending tries to wrap up the fate of humanity after the Chimera invasion as quickly as possible, and while it delivers a tale culminating in the victory of humans over their extraterrestrial overlords, the ending is far from happy. The final cutscene in the game makes allusions to the full state of the Earth after the war is over, and this description creates a pretty pretty bleak vision. With the global population reduced to a tiny fraction of its original number, and some of the remaining people being turned into monsters, the Earth after the Resistance's victory looks a lot more like The Walking Dead or The Last of Us than XCOM. The war has left the world with rapidly depleting resources, scattered bands of survivors, and plenty of chimera experiments still posing a serious threat. Humanity is doomed to extinction, and whoever is left alive can only hope to stay alive as long as they can. Honestly, at this point, they probably would have been better off living under the alien oppression. Just something to consider. Number 6. V dies anyway, right? Cyberpunk 2077. The dystopian theme of Cyberpunk 2077 is present in every aspect of the game. Even the sweet and lighthearted moments in the story are underlined by the misery of what living in the corpocratic hell of Night City would be, and this definitely goes for the title's finale as well. The endings where V manages to destroy Arasaka or run away from the city before the corporation can get its grubby hands on their life might look like the best options at first, but they don't talk a lot about one crucial consequence of opposing Arasaka. Without their help, V will definitely die. Whether you choose to ride into the sunset with Pan Am or single-handedly take out Arasaka with your two bare hands, V is doomed to die due to the relic chip slowly destroying their mind and body. The choice at the end of the game is one of picking between your own integrity and survival. You can either sell your soul to Arasaka to live or die fighting their influence. While the latter option sounds more noble, it doesn't change the fact that V wouldn't have a lot of time left, with their final moments being spent in an agony of slow and certain death, and maybe with your romance choice. Mine was River. I think I'm the only one. Let me know. Number 5. The future children are still victims of an apocalypse. Fire Emblem Awakening. Fire Emblem Awakening has the typical JRPG good guys win ending, where the main characters defeat the evil dragon threatening the world, and despite sacrifices that were made in the process, everyone ends up fine anyway, living happily ever after. However, there is a big elephant in the room that no one seems to address. What happens to the future children after the day is saved? Since time travel in the game doesn't seem to erase the people from the alternate future, we know the children stick around in the new timeline. In fact, the game even gives you individual descriptions of what their lives are after the finale. And yet it never seems to take into consideration that they, lived whole lives in the future. Although they reconnect with the alternate versions of their parents, the truth is their original families are all dead, and this would have definitely left mental scars on their psyche. Additionally, the new world would definitely be different from the apocalyptic one they left behind, so they would likely struggle to adapt. The entire idea of being stuck in an altered reality for the rest of their lives sounds like a horrible scenario that the game does seem to brush off a little too quickly. Number 4. The galaxy is in shambles. Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3's endings are famously bad, so much so that BioWare had to release a whole update with the Citadel DLC just to give fans better closure. However, this is quality we're talking about. In terms of the in-world consequences each ending has on the universe, pretty much every ending is good, leading to Shepard saving the galaxy. Or are they? Well, although the Reaper threat is no more, when you think about every major event that precedes the finale, you quickly realize that the Milky Way is screwed, no matter how you look at it. If you choose to destroy the relay system, the civilizations you were saving have no way of traveling between planets anymore. And even if the relay system were to remain intact, the damages done to individual planets after repelling the Reapers are so catastrophic, the peaceful and prospering Federation of species would be no more. Every species would experience economic crises, and whatever survivors would be left of their population would likely incite mass riots, if not full-on civil wars across the known universe. And that's something not even a magical ghost kid can help you fix. Number 3. Jason Brody is a mess. Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3's iconic ending makes you choose between saving your friends and leaving the islands or sacrificing them to get it on with Citra, only so that ultimately she can make a sacrifice out of you too. The latter choice is obviously a bad ending that punishes you for choosing Citra over your friends, even though she is very hot. But the thing is, the good ending doesn't necessarily guarantee them a long and happy life either. You see, by most accounts, Far Cry 3's protagonist Jason Brody is considered the most insane main character in the history of the entire franchise. The man spends most of the game getting high off ritualistic fumes and going on huge killing sprees, trying to prove that he's the mighty warrior of legends. This drug-induced hyperviolence must have left an impact on his psyche, meaning that even if he chooses to return to civilization, the demons of his past would absolutely catch up with him. If he doesn't relapse into drugs or violence, he probably will relapse into both. Some fans have even speculated that Jason's experience would probably turn him into a serial killer back home, and his first victims would likely be none other than his friends. Number 2, Revolution 1. Now what? Far Cry 6. As the previous Far Cry entry has proven, the Far Cry series has a tendency to end things on a pretty bummer note. Far Cry 6 follows this tradition as well, although it does it more subtly than its predecessor. Far Cry 6 delivers a happy ending, where through many sacrifices, the Yaran revolutionaries win and Anton Castillo is no more. At first, the only depressing thing this ending seems to offer is the death of Anton's son Diego. But when you think about it, the ending also implies a horrible future for Yara. The revolutionaries are confused as to how to rule over Anton's dominion. Some of them even start arguing about it, and the most competent of their members, Danny, is just about done with the cause. The streets of Yara are already filled with blood and angry protesters, meaning that what probably follows the revolution's victory is another civil war, culminating in the election of another dictator that could do what the rebels were too reluctant to, ruling the country with an iron fist. And so the cycle repeats itself. Number 1, nuclear fallout all over again. Fallout 4. The plot of Fallout 4 is considered one of the greatest flaws of the title. The story of the sole survivor and their dealings with the Institute feels convoluted at best and downright nonsensical at worst. And if you're like me, you enjoyed the game because it was still Fallout, but there was nothing that really grabbed you. If you ever needed a reminder of that, all you have to do is look at the game's so-called good endings. What Fallout 4 considers to be a good ending is any of the endings where you don't join the Institute. And why? Because the Institute is a genocidal faction that doesn't mind dooming the entire population of the Commonwealth to advance their goals. So what do you and your faction of choice do to stop them? Well, you nuke the Institute's headquarters, dooming the entire population of the Commonwealth to another wave of nuclear radiation. Yes, although the final mission is meant to be a moment of victory where the good guys destroy the bad guys once and for all, considering you do it with a full-on nuclear explosion, you have to wonder if you're truly not the baddies here. After all, the last thing the Commonwealth needs is another nuclear fallout that's only going to spread more death and radiation across the wasteland, but that's how it goes.